Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
You really don't know, right? Their resume could say they're amazing, but then they get in and they're not amazing. The highlights for me, have been the growth, the consistent growth. And no, it didn't all come at once, right? It's taken me at least 10 years. Okay, this is proof that not everyone is meant to be your client. And when you let go of the ones that aren't, the good ones will come in.
My name is Barrett Young, and this is the Art of Succession podcast. My guest today is my friend Nesha Pai, the founder of Pai CPA and an international public speaker. Today, we're going to hear how Nesha was approached with an offer to buy her CPA firm, and we're going to hear her perspective on the decisions that she weighed as she ultimately turned them down for now. Nesha, welcome to the Art of Succession.
Barrett, oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on your show. You know that we go way back, and I've always admired you as a human, a firm owner, and all the things. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So besides the personal relationship, what interests you most about coming on the show today and sharing your story?
Oh, great question. I think it's important that people know, I think it's important to know why people make the decision to say no for an offer, because we're so plugged into, saying yes to the first offer that might come our way. I think it's important to talk about why it's important to say no as well.
Okay, awesome.
Right? Yeah.
I appreciate it, and I look forward to this discussion. So just a little bit of background. Tell me about you. Tell me about, your career leading up to, and then the founding of Pai CPA for me.
Yeah. So I started out at the Big Six back then, Arthur Andersen, #1 accounting firm in the world. I always have to clarify that. And I spent my entire career, my college career, getting into this firm and got in. And then 18 months later, got let go through the whole counseling out process before Arthur Andersen, had its big crash. And then I went to work in industry and got married, got pregnant, all the things. And then a big life change occurred for me where I got divorced and went back into a local firm here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was at that firm for 5 years. And then at year 5, I approached my boss to not only put in more hours during tax season at the time, but for a raise. And he said no. And I pulled a Jerry Maguire, which you know the story, but for your audience, I pulled a Jerry Maguire. I quit on the spot. He told me I had a mom gap in my resume as the reason that I wasn't going to get the raise that I asked for. And a mom gap, for people that don't know, is the time that a mom takes off to raise her child. Mm-hmm. And so totally unfounded, right? Because the mom gap.
You've been there 5 years.
I've been there 5 years, right? I've been there 5 years. So I quit. I took my one big client, just like Jerry Maguire, and I walked out. And that day I said to myself, I'm going to try to do this myself. I'm going to do this on my own. And I started on my kitchen table, and it's been 14 years since.
Okay. So 2011?
11.
Then?
Yeah.
Okay. And your son was how old?
He was at the time 11.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes.
And I mean, walk me through the past, 12, 13 years leading up to this offer then. I know that's a lot to condense.
Yeah.
But so did you start doing everything that your previous employer was doing? How did that go?
Yeah. I mean, I might have taken a few little templates with me. They weren't proprietary, just FYI, but I learned everything I could at that firm. And at that firm is where I learned to work with small businesses. Also how to work with QuickBooks, right? The two biggest things that you need if you want to work with small businesses at that time. And so I had all this knowledge of how to do it. Did I know anything about marketing, branding, websites, any of that stuff?
No,
absolutely
admin took care of all that stuff, right?
Right. Absolutely not. But I was like, I'll figure it out along the way. Mm-hmm. Best decision I made, as you know, because we both did this, best decision I made in year 2 was joining the community of Thrival, Jason Blummer's community of entrepreneurial accountants all over the world. Mm-hmm. And that is what shaped the growth of my firm. So shout out to Jason and Thrival, right? That is what shaped my firm. And so I learned everything I could learn as an entrepreneurial firm through Thrival. And that is what I have built a lot of my firm on. In that time frame, I made probably 2 of the best hires anyone will ever make. And unfortunately, they're the only 2 hires that have worked out in 14 years. I have my director of operations who's been with me for 12 of the 14 years. And then my team leader who's been with me now for 5 years. And no matter how much we've grown or scaled back in employees, it's always just been down to the 3 of us. So I now still have this firm with the 3 of us, and together we handle 75 clients.
And by handle 75 clients, this is bookkeeping, this is tax. What are you guys doing for them?
Great question. So we do the client accounting services sector of our industry, mostly monthly bookkeeping. That is our primary bread and butter. And of course, there's an advisory piece to that, as well as a service offering for people just coming in that want a quick, like QuickBooks setups, chart of accounts, and then some coaching. But our bread and butter is the monthly bookkeeping.
Okay. Which is recurring revenue, which does come into play when you're talking about selling a business. So you had that part locked down. So give me some highlights and some lowlights of the journey along the way, if you don't mind.
I'd say the lowlights all have to do with hiring, firing.
Why, Nesha?
Well, without, mentioning some of the hiring mishaps I made, because, there are companies that I hired, that I'll not name that really disappointed me. But, I've tried it all. I've done Indeed, I've done LinkedIn, I've done, hiring a recruiting agency. And, at the end of the day, it's like a marriage. Like, until you bring someone into your company, which this, you really don't know, right? Their resume could say they're amazing, but then they get in and they're not amazing. But my lowlights were, getting cussed out, or, being told off about what a terrible leader I am from someone that I had to let go of and fire, right? Or just being disrespected or talked down to, or like I said, cussed out when you had to fire somebody. And I hated that part. I hate that part of the business. I hate it. And so I've been on a hiring freeze now for a good 3 years. Okay. I.e. we've had to have a wait list because I get high anxiety. I get high anxiety from trying to hire.
Yeah. I mean, any technician that becomes a business owner will tell you things like, I wasn't prepared for marketing. I wasn't prepared for processing. I wasn't prepared for all the, behind the scenes admin stuff.
I loved all of that.
That stuff is so much easier than I'm a CPA in public accounting, and I've never hired somebody in my life. Right. I've never been responsible for somebody else's paycheck.
I would rather play on Canva and make graphics than I would trying to hire somebody.
That is real. That is very real. And when you're new and you're good at what you do, hiring instantly becomes like you got to figure this out because you need somebody else to do this work. And
right.
Business owners just get confronted with how bad they are at this process very quickly in a small business. So yeah, I feel for you there. What about some of the highlights? I mean, talk to me about growth. I know a big moment for a lot of entrepreneurs is I'm now making more working for myself than I did working for other people. So was that a quick, like within 2 years?
It wasn't quick. I actually made a leap to double my revenues in 2020. 2020 was my point. my tip-off point. But, when I started selling this CAS outsourced bookkeeping service in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2011, it was unheard of.
Yeah.
You know this. It was unheard of.
Yeah.
Probably
Wait,
in a lot of places.
You're a bookkeeper, aren't you? A CPA? And it's like, well,
right.
this is different. This is
and
more
what's
than
this right. And what's this whole outsource thing and this remote thing?
Yeah, you're not going to come into our office and log into our computer and type
Right.
everything
And
in.
so this was about the time QuickBooks Online was taking off. And so it was a really, really tough sell. But my Jerry Maguire client, which was a restaurant group here in town, really was great because I had, sort of the social proof that, hey, this model works. And I could take that and then I networked the hell out of it here in town. And that's kind of how I grew organically. And because they started trusting, if that restaurant group is using you and saying it works, then this sounds like a cool idea. So that is how I grew organically. And then, of course, over the course of time and then hitting 2020, I started growing outside of Charlotte exponentially. So thank you to the pandemic, right? Because the pandemic made my business model.
I was going to ask, was that additional services related to pandemic, like employee retention credit, PPP funding, anything like that? Or what was it about 2020 that just doubled everything?
People realized they didn't know what the hell they were doing, right? They were like, what's a P&L? Oh my God, like the PPP is asking for a P&L. It's asking for a Schedule C. It's like, I don't know what this stuff is. I better get a hold of my finances. And that's when I think people started paying attention to, I'm not going to make bookkeeping like the last thing. I'm going to make it in the top 3. And people really wanted to get a hold of their finances. At least that was my experience.
Hey there. We're coming up on the end of season 2 of The Art of Succession, and July brings our 1-year anniversary of the show as well. I hope that you've enjoyed the changes that I implemented in season 2. I've gotten some really good data from the algorithm just to see how people have been responding to that. For season 3, I've got some other ideas, but I really want to connect with you as a listener. So down in the description below, you'll find a link to my calendar. I've got space for 5 listeners who are available to book a 5 to 10 minute Zoom call with me. I really just want to talk with you, meet you, and find out what brings you to the Art of Succession, when you listen to the show, and what you enjoy about it as I look to season 3 and beyond of the show. If you don't have the time to book that, I understand. I also have a Google form down there that you can fill out and just leave your feedback for the show as well. I want to thank you for being with me on this journey so far. I'm looking forward to the season 3 launch and the new guests that I'm going to be bringing to you. And let's get back to that episode.
I mean, the highlights for me have been the growth, the consistent growth. And no, it didn't all come at once, right? It's taken me at least 10 years to hit a point where if I wanted to even sell, that I was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
10 plus years. Yeah. 10 plus years.
And along that way, how has your picture of a target client, an ideal client, how has that grown and shifted too?
Oh, massively shifted. I tell the story of, I fired a client at 2 deeper weekends ago at the table during one of our receptions because someone there gave me the guts to do it. But Deeper Weekend is our annual conference for those of you that don't know. But I was taking anybody that would pay me, right? That's what we do sometimes as entrepreneurs. Like, oh, you want to pay me? Did you what? Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that too. Oh, I can do that. So I wasn't niching, right? I was like, oh, you want to pay me? I'll figure out how to do it. Mm-hmm. But the biggest mistake I made was the biggest client I had for several years, a good 5 years, my highest paying client, ended up being, I think he was a narcissist. He was definitely became a pompous a-hole. I don't know if I can cuss on here. Over the course of this 5 years. And I would just turn the cheek. I would turn the cheek as to how he was talking to me, my employees. And it got to a point where we just had it out. It was literally like the week of Deeper Weekend. And I went there and I was sharing with one of our colleagues what happened. He's like, you need to fire him and you need to fire him right now. So I like crafted this email because I couldn't have had the guts to do it alone. Cause I'm like, this is a lot of money. Oh my God, I'm going to fire this guy. And this is a big chunk of my, revenue. And I did it over email. And not only did it feel amazing, but I felt like God, the universe, whatever you believe in, just refilled that missing revenue over the next few months. And I was like, okay, this is proof that not everyone is meant to be your client. And when you let go of the ones that aren't, the good ones will come in.
I mean, this is after you doubled your revenue through 2020. This is about 2022 then that you're talking about here.
Yeah. So I did have a little bit
we
of
always
pushing.
say, I'll let them go once the revenue's there to let them go. But then once the revenue's there, we get used to that too. And we're like, well, it's not really that bad.
That's right. That's right. And
it's kind of like saying I'll budget to save once I have more money. It's like, well, no, you got to start, you got to make those boundaries now. And then the revenue will fill in afterwards. So.
And I had to go and apologize to my team because I said, my core values, respect is one of them, right? I said, team, I let you down. I let you down. I let this man disrespect us for years.
Talking about the shift in the business too. So you said that you do advisory now. How have you identified that as a core function that you want to sell, and what's that look like today?
Barrett, I think that we, at least a lot of us in our group, we use sort of the process as the means, like, the tax return or the bookkeeping. But what I really, really enjoy is helping entrepreneurs come up with the aha moment, talking them through their P&L. Can I hire an employee? Can I buy a piece of equipment? And it's what really makes us valuable. Even in the world of AI, it's always going to make us valuable. And so I started just organically talking to people, and I'm like, I should make this a service, right? A coaching kind of service. And it works. It works and people want it. And I probably don't sell it enough, but that's kind of the direction I want to go, is adding even more of the advisory piece.
So, I mean, what's that look like for Pai CPA? I mean, a lot of companies will do monthly bookkeeping or quarterly bookkeeping and send an email or send a couple numbers or something like that and just say it's done. Others will have a meeting, but it's like going over the minors and things like that. If the meeting actually ends up happening, what's that look like? How is that different for a select number of your clients? That's probably different from how you treat the other of your 75.
Yeah. I mean, more personal attention, more going through some of the metrics or KPIs. There's a software, Fathom, that we are always talking about in our group that I haven't yet pulled the plug on, but I'd like to be able to get a software like that will help me cater to, say, my top 5 clients and come up with these great reports that our clients can understand in how to use these numbers, right, in running their business. Right now, I'd say we fall a little short in terms of we're just maybe having a quarterly meeting, right? Or we are sending the financials with a few, like, hey, office supplies was high kind of thing. But I want to move more in the direction of how can I create a VIP service, a 5-star service for my top 5 or 10 clients, and use a software to help me do that and have more personal attention, which that's kind of what I'm working on in 2025.
Okay, cool. So we'll come back to that then, because I'm definitely interested in hearing your renewed vision for the company since you've passed on this acquisition. So let's get into the acquisition now at this point. So who approached whom? How did that go down? Talk me through just a little bit of where your mindset was. This is early 24, I think.
This is early. This might have been January 24, maybe even very end of 23, but I want to say beginning of 24. I had a random broker, CPA broker, not one that we know, That's very popular here in the Southeast. I had a random CPA broker he's in Atlanta, so also in the Southeast, but just send me a network. It was a marketing email. I got a marketing email, and for some reason it caught my eye, and I wrote him back. And this might have been after I think our Deeper Weekend conference where we talked about sales, scale, grow, or whatever.
Yep.
And so
that was the 23 themes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was in the mindset, right? Yep. And so I got the marketing email. I write this guy back. Don't even know who he is. Look him up on LinkedIn, but I was like, okay, he looks legit. And I say, hey, do you sell smaller bookkeeping cast firms? Like, I'm not like going to make you $1 million, but would you look at my firm possibly? And he writes me back and he says, absolutely. So we start this conversation. And immediately this guy is like, okay, you have the perfect sellable firm. You are remote. You have recurring revenue. You have longevity, right? Proof of longevity. And like you have processes in place. Like you have all the elements. You would be a perfect candidate. I'm like, okay, great. So we go through the process. He interviews several people. We go through some interviews that they're like, no, not a good fit. And then they ended up being a fit for a solo firm owner in Atlanta who has the tax piece. And he's like, I want to bring in the CAS bookkeeping piece. Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. And he came up to Charlotte. We had this great lunch. I'm like, this is going to be a great fit. He's going to take care of my employees. He's going to take care of my clients. And, okay, I'm going to sell my firm and I can go pursue my speaking, consulting, workshop business, right? And I thought, this is great. And I got the offer I wanted, which is 2 times gross revenue. Okay, so I got the offer I wanted. I knew I couldn't get more than that. And it was barely I didn't even think I could get 2 times, but I wasn't going to do it if I couldn't get 2 times. So he says, yeah, I will pay you that. I will pay for that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Right. After I sent it, going through the due diligence, he's like, I'll pay for that. And I said, man, this is awesome. Okay. But just so you know, 2 times gross revenue by the time taxes were taken out, the broker fee was paid. I would have put this away for retirement, but like, oh, hey, Nesha, like you got to live too. Right. So I was like, this other business that you're trying to build is like building from the ground up. So it's not like I had another revenue. I didn't have another income stream. I'm not married, right? So I didn't have another income stream. So I was like, okay, if you do this, like, let's really think this through. So I went through the due diligence process. In that time, I did my explorative sabbatical in Paris, which I'm getting ready to do again. But I wanted to go to Paris in the spring and I wanted to live there. So I left March of last year and came back at the end of May. And so while I was gone, I went through the due diligence process. So the process happened over this 3-month period.
Yep.
And this guy is not independently wealthy. So nor did he have the cash to pay me. So he's like, I got to go to the bank to get the money. So he went to like Truist, and Truist has a great SBA relationship. Department. So he had to do like the SBA loan, and that was like 2 levels of due diligence. And we go through this whole thing over 3 months and all the paperwork and all the documents. And we get to the very end, which is the week that I'm coming home. And he says, man, got a little snafu. And I'm like, okay. And he says, well, the SBA wants me to hold a 10-year seller finance note. And I said, what do you mean? Like, what's that? And he goes, oh, for 25% of the sales price. So 25% of the sales price, I would have had to wait on a 10-year note. And I said, hell no. I go, number 1, I may not be alive in 10 years. Number 2, you might go out of business. Number 3, 10 years? Really? Like, let's think of the net present value of money. So I said, no, unless you can change the banking deal. Go to another bank and pay me full outright. So that's where we left it at that point. I get home, I'm home a week. And I got the news that my baby sister died suddenly of a heart attack. And of course, my world fell apart. And I said to myself, oh my God, like I was saved. If you believe in God, I was like, God, you saved me, because if I had sold my business and this happened in my family, I would have, it's like, my baby, right? I'm giving my baby away, and my sister died. And I'm going to go into the deepest, blackest hole anyone could ever crawl into.
Nothing to keep your mind off of it. Nothing
Correct.
to stay occupied.
That's right. And at that time, my mind went blank. When you go through a tragic situation, the neurons in your brain just shut down. They just shut down, right? And so my brain was shut down. I was like, I didn't even have the motivation to go and try to build this other business, much less run my accounting firm day to day, right? So I was thankful. And I went back to the guy and I said, I am so sorry. I said, I did not put you through this wild goose chase for nothing, but this is what's happened in my life, and it's off the table. It is off the table. And totally understanding. This guy even has reached out to me recently, but I couldn't do it. And then after some introspection in that summer, 2 months after my sister died, I got diagnosed with breast cancer, Barrett. And I thought, man, what is happening in 2024 for me? Okay. And then, just to add some comical humor to this, at the end of my last week of radiation in December 23rd is when I rang the bell. The very last week, as I'm walking into radiation across the hospital courtyard, get hit by a FedEx truck. Literally. I literally get hit by a FedEx truck, my body. No broken bones, thank God. But I'm like, things come in threes. That was my third. And I said, and you know what my anchor was this whole time? My anchor was my firm, Barrett. Mm-hmm. My anchor was my firm. If I did not have my firm, I would have gone into a deep spiral depression.
I mean, your story is just unbelievable. Had I not been there along, hearing you updating us through the whole thing, it'd be hard to fathom that. I didn't know the piece about you actually got your asking price, though. That's what's just so remarkable about it, is so many business owners walk away when they don't get what they want for it, and you did, and you still.
Yeah, But here's why other than the things that happened to me subsequently, what I realized in all of that is I am going to be 54 years old in May. And so I'm like, oh my God, I have all these years. Like, if it's not broken, why fix it? If it is giving me revenue and it is an asset, it is giving me revenue, which can then fund the side gig, the Nesha Pai brand. Why would I get rid of it? Why?
I want to thank Nesha Pai for this conversation and for sharing her story and the hits that she took in 2024 that are a part of that story. In part 2, we're going to talk about her renewed vision for her firm in this next phase, and you can catch that episode right here. If this has been helpful for you, I ask that you please share it with someone else, and I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.